Hello everybody and big welcome to one of our free live classes. My name is Janette and I'm from Case Flower School, and these live classes are suitable for beginners, people who are dabbling around with flowers, people who grow flowers, people who maybe live next door to a neighbour and they grow flowers, or people who just want to do it for enjoyment. Now obviously here at the school we also hold professional courses and commercial courses, and they are kind of geared towards working in flower shops, working from your own home on a commercial basis, or eventually thinking of opening up your own business. But today it's all about fun, relax, sit back and enjoy it. And obviously if you want to copy this display, like, you can always re-watch this video at a later stage. If you're watching it on Facebook, I recommend if you click share, that way then it'll share to your own page and you'll always be able to rewind it and watch it at a later stage. Now what you're going to need, first of all, take note that when I'm doing, the time of year that I'm doing this course is September, October. So a lot of things that I'm going to tell you today is relevant if you're also watching during September, October. Obviously if you're watching at a different time of the year, there is some things that's going to change. But listen, pop over to YouTube, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Case Flower School, and then I have these sort of displays for if you're doing it in April, May, June or July. So today it's a hydrangea door wreath, and these are all hydrangeas that you can forage from your own garden or your neighbour next door from her garden, okay? The reason why I'm saying and emphasising about September, October, and again I am obviously talking about Ireland, UK, you would be the same, maybe somebody watching in from New Zealand, Spain or America, things will be different because it's all to do with the seasons, okay? But here in Ireland, September, October, these hydrangeas are basically at their best, starting to kind of like turn or dry out, okay? But they're as tough as nails, as we say here in Dublin. They're as hardy. During the month of August here in Ireland, we get all four seasons. We get spring, we get summer, we get autumn, we get winter. We get snow, hailstones, ice, wind, hurricanes, tsunami, and obviously fantastic sunny weather all thrown in, and that could all be on the one day, by the way. So these hydrangeas are really strong, really hardy. They have stood up to the wet and wild, you know, the way, and the tough weather of April, May, June, July, August, and here we are in September, October, and you go out to your garden and you snip them. And I recommend to cut the stems about 20 centimetres, you know, 7 or 8 inches approximately. So there you go, like, it's cut them all. And what I recommend you to do is, for a 12-hour period, is submerge them completely in water. So how I did it, okay, last night, about 7:30 last night, I went out to the garden and I cut all the heads, and I tried to kind of pick heads that were near enough the same size. So I didn't pick all big ones and a few small ones, or vice versa, you know what I mean? Kind of have medium small ones here. Now I have done lots more tutorials and you will see where I use mostly big heads, you know, that way, but that was just all to do with getting better value, not necessarily to do with the style of the wreath. Anyway, back to last night, went out to the garden, cut all my hydrangeas, you know, that way. I filled up 5 or 6 buckets of water right up to the top. Now I'm lucky enough in my garden, my front garden, I have an outdoor tap, and I always have lots of flower buckets because we're always getting deliveries of foliage delivered to the house. Because as you may not know, Case Flower School is upstairs. So if we can avoid having to haul buckets of foliage up the stairs, and I always find foliage is better if we store it outside. So we store a lot of it in our garden. If you're ever short of greenery, all you have to do is look up my home address. Anyway, back to the hydrangeas. After I cut them, I then submerged them that way down into the bucket of water, okay? So that's why it took 6 or 7 buckets, you know what I mean? Because I didn't want to squash them into it. So I just literally plunged them down, went in, had a cup of tea, watched Netflix, went to bed, had a good night's sleep. And 8 o'clock this morning when I was on my way to work, and this morning in Dublin, obviously I'm in September, it was lashing rain, it was, but that's typical of Ireland anyway, it's always lashing rain. So in the rain, I lifted out all the hydrangea heads that were dripping with water, and I just, on the path, you know, that way, in the driveway, I just kind of stood them like that, all upside down. If they toppled over, I didn't really mind, I left them there. And that was so that they would drip dry, as we call it, you know what I mean, that they weren't going to be soaking wet. Now the idea of drowning them was to hydrate them, okay? So with hydrangeas, the secret is in the name. Hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. They take in a huge amount of water through the petals, which people don't understand, you know that way? So they drink a lot of water as well. And that's why with the stems, I kind of try to leave them 7-8 inches, 20-22 centimetres approximately. And I don't cut them really, really short. Now the base that I'm going to use is going to be a moss frame, but this is a dried out moss frame. So this is a moss frame that I would have probably mossed about maybe 8 weeks ago here in the school. And again, I would have done it as a tutorial. So if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you'll be able to watch all these videos where I show you how to make these bases. Now normally when people think about a moss base, the idea is that they want it moist, okay, holding water. Now think about moss. First of all, moss is a natural sponge, so it'll automatically take up water. So if I want this moist, all I have to do, bath the water, basin of water, bucket of water, drop it down, bubble, 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 and it'll take up the water for me. Did you like that? Bubble, 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 by the way. And listen, if there's anybody watching, so that I don't think I'm here talking to myself, any chance of putting a comment, giving us a thumbs up, giving us a few hearts, and let us know that you're watching. And again, if you do have friends who love flowers, and you think, God, they might be interested in watching that video as well, why don't you tag them? Or the other thing is, if you have any questions throughout this video, put it in the comments. We respond to all our comments. So even if you're watching this months later, we'll get a notification to say, Mary Smith asked, you know what I mean, how many sugars do you take in your tea? And I'll be able to pop on and I'll be able to answer that question. Anyway, back to our moss base. I don't want it moist today. So by making this door wreath with hydrangeas during the months of September, October, that are nice and hardy, that have been through the Irish or the UK weather, and that have all been hydrated and submerged in water for 12 hours, they will dry out naturally on the base. So I actually don't want this moss base wet. I'm going to leave it purposely dry. When I'm mossing bases, I normally do a few of them at the same time, and I kind of store them on their side, you know, the way that the air circulates around them. Whereas some people try and keep them moist all the time, and what'll happen is the moss can start to go smelly, but also the wire that you've wrapped around the moss will start to go rusty, and there's a good chance that it'll fall apart. So the thing is, you can always get your moss bases prepared way in advance for the likes of Christmas or autumn or whatever the season might be, but I recommend to store them dried out. I also don't recommend storing them on top of each other, do you know what I mean? Because the bottom one, imagine us all piled on top of each other, the poor fecker in the bottom, they're the one that get flattened, you know that way, and literally get squashed, and they'll also go smelly as well. So normally what I do is I get a sweeping brush handle and I insert them through like a sweeping brush handle, all my rings, you see, and I kind of like suspend it between, I'm going to say, the back of two chairs. We obviously have a bracket set up here in the warehouse, so we suspend our sweeping brush handles, you know that way, and then it means that the air can circulate around them. But as I said, if we want them moist, it's just a matter, like oasis, it's just a matter of dropping them back down into a bucket of water. So materials, what are you going to need? You're going to need your hydrangea heads that have been conditioned and treated like I've just described. If you're watching this at a different time of the year, okay, because obviously these videos are on YouTube and people can sometimes find them in the middle of January, the treatment is slightly different, okay? But what we have on offer for our Case Flower School followers, and obviously you're a follower now, is where you can sign up to a free online program. Now it is a commercial program and it is a professional program, and it is for people that are maybe working at it kind of flower wise. And this program contains 60 different tutorials on the treatment and the conditioning of 60 different varieties of fresh flowers and foliage. It's like an encyclopedia of exactly what you do to the flowers. And within that, we do have a section, hydrangeas. It's all kind of like indexed at the beginning. And if you watch that, it'll show you the treatment and conditioning of hydrangeas for when you want it for flower arranging, when you want it for bridal floristry, and obviously at different times of the year. Now, if anybody is interested in this link, what you can do is comment below and just kind of say, I'd love the link, okay? And we'll respond back to you when we get the notification. Or the other thing that you can do is you can drop us an email. So our email address is info@flowerschoolireland.com. Just email us and we'll send the link back to you straight away. Now, you will need a roll of this reel wire, or some people call it mossing wire. I suppose mossing wire is probably the most common name because that's what we use it for. We use it for making mossed bases. But obviously, whoever trained me yonks ago, a few years ago, they always called it reel wire, as in R-E-E-L. And here in Ireland, we have the Irish dancing reels, and sure, reel meant something to me, and I've always called it reel wire. So if you're watching and you decide to call it mossing wire or reel wire, it's the same thing, and even in the wholesalers, they call it both, okay? So most of these rolls can be bought from your local suppliers. And again, like your local flower shop, they will supply you with it if you're kind of like the public or you're working from your own home. Most wholesalers are strictly trade only, but there is a couple of wholesalers that are open to the public. One would be Evergreen silk plants. The best thing to do is Google them. They're in County Louth, so that's Evergreen silk plants in County Louth. Google them and you can buy the reel wire from them. They'll post it to you, by the way. Ireland or the UK, they'll post it to you. And another wholesaler that sells to the public and very reasonably priced would be O'Neill's Flowers, and they're in Carlingford. Again, it's in Ireland, okay? So O'Neill's Flowers, Carlingford, just go and Google them. You'll find their website and you can order the reel wire from them, and again, they'll post it out to you. So normally what we do is to attach the reel wire is we just hold it with our thumb, you see the wire against the moss at the back, and then we just wind it around the same section 2 or 3 times. Little bit of advice to you, don't unravel the reel wire. Keep the reel wire kind of bound up tightly there. Like, don't unravel it. If you unravel it and you have like a big long roll of reel wire, you're knotting it around yourself and it makes it more awkward. So I've kind of a selection of, these actually were kind of from the same sort of bushes, but some of the heads are more green and some of them kind of more of a winey colour. So I'm going to use a selection of them. So just pick up your hydrangea head that you're going to use and place it directly down onto your moss base. Now for the moment we're not going to cut the stems, because I find that they dry better if you leave the stem kind of long on them rather than cutting them short. But yeah, up close, can you see where my finger is? Red nail varnish. So in here where that finger is wiggling, that's where I'm going to wrap the reel wire around. Now again, if you don't want to use the reel wire, you can use the hand-tied twine, which you can't put my hand on. But again, I've used it in other tutorials. And them 2 suppliers I mentioned earlier on, Evergreen Silk Plants or O'Neill's Flowers in Carlingford, both of them also sell hand-tied twine. And if you prefer to use that, you can. The advantage of the hand-tied twine is that if you pull it too hard, it won't cut through the flowers. Where the reel wire, if you do pull that too hard, it could cut through the flowers. So I've wrapped it around 2 or 3 times, and then I'm just going to come down the stem, just about halfway, and just wrap it around once or twice. Now, you can do alternative like greens and wines and greens and wines, but sometimes the heads will be small and I might end up putting in 2 heads at the same time. But what you're going to do is kind of push that forward, a bit like your hair, you know, push it out of the way. So push that head forward like I'm doing there, and then get this head and slide it in underneath it. You see, like that, really close together. So that's important because that's what it's going to look like. If you don't do that, what will happen is when they dry out, they'll shrink, okay? And you'll end up with a big gap in between your heads. So again, I've went around the same spot 2 or 3 times, come down the stem, and then just wrap the wire around it. And you see the way, I'm just going to take off that leaf, and then that will kind of hold it in place. So then get your next head. I'm going back for the green. This is kind of a bit of a crooked head, so I'll have to cut this one a bit shorter, no choice. And again, I'm going to push that head slightly forward, squash that in underneath it, get my reel wire, and if I'm going too far away from it, I'll just come back down, do you know the way? Ground it 2 or 3 times, back down the stems, you know the way, just to kind of attach them in. That one moved a little bit, so I'm just going to go back again. So as I said, pull tight, but obviously not too tight that you squash the heads. Push that one forward, and here we go, we maneuver. It's like parking a car, you know the way you say, back up there, back up. So back up there, squeeze this one in beside it. If you were parking your car, you wouldn't go that close, by the way. And this is what it's looking like so far. So I have 4 heads in, because always at the end of this tutorial, somebody will have in the comments, how many heads did you use? And I'll say, I'll be a smart arse, and I'll say, rewind and watch it from the beginning, and will you count the heads for me? Because I never count the heads as I go along. Now this head is a little bit bigger, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to put it on a diet here, a little bit of liposuction, and just shrink it down a little bit, just so that it'll fit in better. It's a shame, isn't it, to do that? So again, we're going to push up our heads there, squash in this one underneath it. The colour of this one is gorgeous because it still has the pinky hues, you know the way, tones on it. Again, go around the stem in the same spot 2 or 3 times, nice and tight. Go around the straight stems, you know the way, a couple of times. That kind of like brings them onto the stem. And as I said, sometimes you may kind of have to go back to where you were. and then we're back to our whiny version. So push up in the bed there, squash it in there nice and tight, and the same thing around the same spot 2 or 3 times. I'll just hold it up just so that you can see what it's looking like. Now, as I said, I haven't got a clue how many heads I've used, you know, that way, but I'm just hoping to the best that I have enough to go all the way around. And sure, if I don't, we'll just have to count them and then say, well, the next time we need to go for more. So we'll wrap it around, and then we're going to go for our green head. So push that up forward. There's again a lovely one, isn't it? See the way the two-tone? The tones on this is beautiful. So again, squash it in. So we're going to be repeating the same process all the way around. So while I'm doing that, anybody has any questions about the school, just put them in the comments. So people are always asking us, you know, when we meet people, they say, what do you work at? And we say, we're floristry tutors. And people say, what's that? Never heard of anybody doing that. What exactly do you do? So what we do here at the school is we train florists. Now we train florists, so it's not just flower arranging, you know, like your night classes or your hobby classes. Nothing wrong with them, by the way, or tech classes. That's not what we do here at the school, you know that way. They're all commercial courses. So they're for people who want to work at it, you know that way, who want to maybe get a job working in a flower shop, maybe want to do a little bit at home themselves, kind of on a sideline, want to maybe open up their own business eventually. These heads are small, so you can see the way I'm going to put 2 together. Do you see the way, just to kind of like get the width that I need. Might even have to put a third one in. We'll see how we go there. Squash that one in there as well. Don't be skipping on it. If I don't have enough to go all the way around, I'll work it out and I'll put a big bow in there kind of instead. You know the way? But I do like all the heads to be nice and close together. So back to, like here at the school, we do commercial courses geared towards working in a flower shop, okay? So the difference is we teach you all about stem counting, which I'm not doing obviously here in this demonstration, but this is a free class. So stem count is that when you go to make a church arrangement, maybe like a 4 or 5 foot arrangement, you know that way, is how many flowers will you need? What size will you make it? How many roses, how many gladdies, how many lilies, whatever the flower would be. So we teach you how to work out what the cost is, what the stem count is, like your recipe, your list of ingredients, but also the formulas for what your selling price is. Where to buy your materials wholesale. So earlier on there I mentioned like suppliers where you can get served, but there also is wholesalers that are strictly for people that are in the trade, you know that way. And in them wholesalers you can normally get a bigger selection of materials, you know that way, and normally the flowers are a little bit cheaper. Now with our courses here at the school, we always supply all the flowers and all the materials. So if the students once they're based in Ireland, even in Northern Ireland, they get a fresh flower delivery, and that would come direct from Holland, right? So we get all our students to set up their own accounts with Holland. So if after the classes then they want to order in flowers, it's not a big deal, do you know what I mean? That they would be able to order in their own flowers, have their own accounts. And even with the wholesalers that are more strict about the trade, again we have like agreements with them that students, we have all their application forms, etc., just to let you see how this is coming together. I will have enough heads to make out. So we would have like the application forms and with agreement with the wholesalers that the students can open up accounts with them and get the bigger choices, get the better selections, and obviously get the better prices as well. Now as it came near the end there, you can see there I've happened to kind of like snip the stems, okay? Now what I'm going to do now is add in, again I'm cutting up the stems and I'm just kind of filling in that kind of like last little area, right? So we'll just get these, I'll probably do them separately. So I have one in here first, so I'm just going to wrap the wire around it to hold it. But you have to be careful that you don't flatten down the heads, okay? And then I would prefer a wine one, but unfortunately I haven't got another wine one left. One didn't fall on the floor, no. So we're just going to have a green one. So we're a little bit unbalanced here. But you listen, I can always put in a bow there and it'll be absolutely fine. If you see the dusty pink bow, Deirdre, you might pass it up to me. So at this stage now, I'm kind of wiggling the wire, you see, in and out through the hydrangeas there. It's on the chair. And just pulling our wire tight, doing 2 jobs here at the same time. And again, a little bit of what we call wiggling and wangling your wire. Do you know that way? So where you're securing the last few stems in, but you just want to make sure that you don't flatten down heads. And then all you do here at the back is you just cut your wire, and the piece of wire that's left over, you bend it over into kind of like a hairpin or a horseshoe shape, and then you're able to stab it up, you see, into your base there to secure it. Now you can just use that as it is on its own, you know, that way. You can put a bow in it. To be honest, I don't know, will we go for a bow or will we leave it without? Maybe just put a tie string on it.
Yeah, I think so, put a tie string.
I don't think it needs a bow. And anyway, when you pop over to YouTube, loads of videos, loads of tutorials on putting bows on things, okay? So I think all I'm going to do is a little hanger. So we're just going to get, look, this kind of dusty pink. We do have this for sale at the school, by the way. You'll find it on our website, flowerschoolisland.com. And again, if you've ever any problem on sourcing something, don't be afraid to drop us an email, info@flowerschoolisland.com. So I'm just wiggling this organza ribbon in around the moss frame, but under the hydrangeas so that I don't flatten the hydrangeas. So you can kind of see the way it's slipping out there, you see. And then I'm going to bring our two pieces together. I'm going to tie a knot. And then I'm going to leave the two pieces loose. So then whoever wants to tie that onto, whether tie it onto their gates, tie it onto their door knocker, tie it onto their door knobs, you can tie it onto anything at all. And again, they can cut off the surplus bit. So there's a very, very simple door wreath, hydrangea door wreath, and that will just dry out. Now I do recommend when you're hanging it on your door, you need a door with a porchway. And the reason is I would prefer this not to get wet over the next few days until it dries out. Even when it's dry, I prefer not to get wet. Where if you hang it on your front hall door, you don't have a porch, and it is going to rain tonight in Ireland and tomorrow and the next day and the next day, when it gets wet, it won't be able to dry. Do you know that way? It'll probably then just kind of stay fresh looking for about 5 or 6 days. You'd be amazed, even though people will say about hydrangeas, you know, that way lasting. In September, October, if you condition them the way I have just mentioned, they will last out water, do you know the way, once they're kind of kept moist. But I want this to dry out. So just keep it in a dry area where the fresh air is circulating around it. So hall door is perfect, you know that way, with a porchway kind of protecting it, and you'll have a fabulous hydrangea wreath. Now some people might go out to their garden and they might say, well, their hydrangeas has turned already and they're kind of starting to go brown. Still use them. You will be absolutely, you're getting them for nothing. So listen, they're not costing you anything. So still go out and forage them, okay, collect them. You won't probably have to do the hydrating treatment because they're probably dried already, you know, off your bush. So make up your wreath. And what about spraying it? If you go to the likes of Lidl or Aldi, but listen, the wholesalers and suppliers and the places I mentioned also sell, you know, like aerosol tins of spray. And there's, like, one of my favourites is the one that's called Rose Gold, okay? And if you spray it now, Rose Gold, it looks amazing. But if you're doing this maybe nearer Christmas time, spray it gold or spray it silver, a little bit of glitter on it, a few little pine cones going through it, and again you have an alternative sort of Christmas door wreath. We always want something different. Hope you enjoyed that tutorial. Try to keep it short, simple and sweet. Again, any questions, put them in the comments. I would really appreciate if you shared this video, because obviously it's our way of advertising our courses. If you have any questions, drop us an email, info@flowerschoolisland.com, or again, why not visit our website, flowerschoolisland.com. Thanks for joining us.